Hello everybody, welcome back to Coach Quip. I'm Coach Chris.
I'm Coach Robyn.
And this is episode 202, and today we are talking about data. We're talking about what is worth
You
tracking.
say data?
I did say data. Do you say data?
I say data.
Gosh, well, this is going to be an awkward episode, isn't it?
Buckle in!
Yeah, here we go, and I'm leaving that in. Today we're talking about what is worth tracking. So with our watches and our fitness trackers, there are like infinite metrics on there now, and so many bells and whistles, but the truth is, a lot of them are more than what our everyday runners need. So in this episode, we're going to break down the different types of data that might be the different types of information that you might be getting from your wearables and whether or not it's worth tracking.
I think even as a coach, having all of the metrics all of the time, I have to be really careful about the notifications that I'm sent because that's a lot coming in, right? I tend to tailor it for each athlete in terms of the things that I think are most important for them or what they're training for. But wow, if you feel overwhelmed, you have good reason to.
Yeah, and that is a great first note for us to start on. So every person might need to track different things, right? So as an example, if you are a runner with low cadence, you might be monitoring your cadence at a more regular interval than somebody whose cadence is set and they've never had an issue with it. So there are definitely different metrics that you might want to dive into depending on who you are and what you're training for. Also worth noting, our watches and wearables, they all track slightly differently.
They do.
So if you are wearing a Garmin, an Apple Watch, and a Whoop, and an Oura Ring, then you might get 4 different HRVs.
Yes,
right?
very true.
And so whatever you are tracking, you should be consistent with it. It's like using a scale.
I was going to say the same thing.
Oh, well, say it.
Yeah, exactly the same thing, right? Like if you are using a scale to capture your body comp, you're going to use that same exact scale over and over and over. You're not going to use a different scale, even a different or the same model and a different scale, right? We are going to use the same scale over and over.
Yeah, so that's how we're going to start this one. That's how you should be looking at this. So using consistent metrics. But let's go through some of the data points.
I'm just going to keep saying that, aren't we?
All right, first up is time, your time of training. I think this is an important one to track. What are your thoughts?
I love time-based training, especially we see it usually with ultra runners or Ironman athletes. That tends to be the more common time-based formats, although our edge runners know we write the majority of our workouts in time-based formats. At the end of the day, your body remembers moving time. It doesn't remember miles. It doesn't really even remember pace. It just knows, I was moving for, 140 minutes. Check the box, right? So time for me is one of the most important metrics to understand total overall training volume. I love Training Peaks for this. I don't always know what the athletes can see on the app, but I know like on the full site, it gives you every single thing that you did as a total for the week, and you can set it up in different microcycles. I always do a 7-week or a 7-day full week, but I can see swim, bike, run, lift total, and that really helps me understand if someone's feeling super sluggish, why that might be, or if they're feeling extra fresh, why that might be.
Yeah, it's a great one to measure your overall training volume, and I think it's just a really simple one, so this is definitely one that we think that you should be tracking. Next up is distance. So distance. For some athletes, this is useful in terms of tracking your volume, building endurance, and preventing overtraining. But of the two of these, if I only had to choose one, I'd choose time.
I probably would. Yeah, I probably would.
But that said, distance is helpful because a lot of our marathon training plans or half marathon training plans are written in distance. Edge is a hybrid distance and time based, but this is one that, depending on your pace, distance may be more or less helpful for you.
So here's a little comparison of time and distance. That this is also why you work with a coach. If you're training for something that is a more specific or longer or just more complex. I have an athlete. He's a very accomplished runner, marathoner, now ultra marathoner, and went all the way up to 100K for racing, started to get into really hard, frankly, 50Ks that are extremely mountainous, i.e. they're slower, right? And yet where he lives is pretty flat. And he was of course in like a build, which I'm sure he was just cranky and tired and was like, why are you training me all of these miles? I was writing his stuff in distance-based format. Why am my miles so high? I mean, this is like what I trained for a 50 miler. And I was like, well, let's look at the finishing time. The finishing time for this 50K is actually projected to be more time than your 50 mile time because of where it is in the terrain. So I was like, I know you are training for a 50K, but it really, from a moving time perspective, it feels a lot more like a 50 miler.
All right, so we have time and distance, both super helpful. Moving on now to pace. What do you think about pace?
I like pace. I think I like pace, especially when I can see the easy runs and making sure that they're truly easy and not, leaving too much of a mark. But then if we're going to be doing things like tempo and speed, I want to see laps being taken so that it's not just one big blob. We can see what's actually happening in the intervals.
Okay, here's the brilliance of coaching is that the answer that everybody would give is, yes, of course, pace is important when you're doing your speed workouts, right? Like we need to make sure we're hitting our speed numbers so that we're getting getting those benefits. But what you said at the start here of your easy runs is actually probably the most important way of monitoring pace, because too many runners get into that sort of gray zone of not going fast enough to be a speed workout, but not going slow enough to have those easy recovery miles. So that is a really, really good call out. Pace is important for those ranges. So we're working on the easier parts of our runs to get that aerobic capacity, and then the above, faster the speed work, that 20% of work that we're going to be doing, also important there. Make sure that you get a pace card. We've done episodes about finding your pace in the past, so that is a great one to track.
And this is also one we're talking about easy runs and seeing paces relative to heart rate, right? As long as effort's not increasing. Over a 16-20 week build, about halfway through, your easy run should be a little bit faster with the same relative effort than the beginning. And that is, for us as coaches, that is the best possible predictor of fitness, because it means that you're moving gradually your pace card up while staying wildly aerobic. Thumbs up. Oh, heart rate. This is one that I think people get really, really, really caught up in. It does track your effort, but not necessarily like in real time. It's like in shorter intervals. Otherwise, you would not ever have a battery in your wearable, right? But, heart rate is a little funky. It is easily influenced by things like heat, humidity, dehydration, time, cycle, right? Especially right now, we can't emphasize heat and humidity enough. I also know, chest-based is always going to be better than wrist-based. But again, you're going to want to always measure your device to your device. So even if you switch watches, like please do not compare like an old watch to a new watch. You kind of got to start over, because especially with wrist-based ones, they get a little finicky.
Yeah, so with heart rate, I think we can also wrap resting heart rate up in here. Resting heart rate is also something that a lot of athletes track and monitor. It can be helpful to see your recovery, but also, again, is also easily influenced, right? A bad night of sleep might throw that off, but you might actually physically be pretty well recovered. So it's a little bit tricky. We think that if you are a person who trains by heart rate and that works for you, that's awesome. There are some really great heart rate training programs out there. It's a good metric to have on the side, but not to obsess over if you're not using it as your prime way of monitoring your fitness.
2 ways to use heart rate as well. If you notice a spike in your resting heart rate, chances are you're either have something going on like underslept, overstress, or something like a cold is coming on. So that's just good to know your overall numbers, again, using the same wearable over and over. The other thing is telling a story in a workout, right? I had an athlete, she's halfway through marathon training. She's made really big gains in the last year and a half. And she had a 4 mile tempo, half mile easy, and a 1.5 mile tempo, right? So 5.5 total with doing the big break, a big chunk in the beginning. Her heart rate for the 4 mile was like in the 180s. The recovery, she went super slow. It was so hot. This week has been an inferno. Mm-hmm. It was so hot. Her heart rate, despite going 4 minutes slower average pace than her target marathon pace during that rest interval, so definitely easy AF, if not some walking, her heart rate only lowered 10 beats.
Ooh.
And then when she tried to do the final 1.5, she was like, I could not do it. I'm like, well, let me tell you why. This is not a fitness issue. It's a heat and humidity issue, because your heart rate normally falls 25 plus beats in a half-mile recovery interval, and it fell 9, right? So using it as a tool to tell a story of what's going on with a workout too.
I love that. I think this was probably applicable to all of the different points that we've been making. Is when you piece them all together, you can get a really good picture. But you know, this athlete isn't obsessing over heart rate, in every segment of every run. But when you combine it all together, you're going to see the bigger picture, and that's kind of true of all of these. Next up is cadence. So I started off with the example of paying attention to cadence if you need to. I think this is one that is good if you are having an issue, but it is not a metric that I look at for my athletes usually if they're established in their cadence.
Yeah, if we know it's not an issue, we know it's going to go up and down a little bit based on how fast they're running. Mm-hmm. But if you've done something like a biomechanical assessment and we know that you're like 155 and we know we need to bring that up a few percent, then it becomes something, it's a metric that you can really use to gauge how efficiently you are improving as a runner. And it also tells you what to do during a run, right?
Yep. It's a good one to look at if you are coming back into running, either after time off or an injury, because that does reset our form a little bit. But this is one that I would say is kind of an accessory. It's not something I would look at or even have on my watch as on the home screen.
No. It's for after.
It would be something for after.
And cadence as well. It's a good point. If you're coming back into running, make sure you're taking splits of run versus walk, because if you're doing run walk, it's going to look crazy. It's just the average is going to be so low because, of course, our walk cadence is much lower than a run cadence, right? Because we're not in flight. So just take those splits so that you can manage those numbers a little bit more accurately.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next up is HRV, and this one I think has been such a hot topic for a couple of years now.
It causes panic.
Yeah, it does. It is like it has become a prime metric, and one that I get alerts about from athletes through both Whoop and different watches as well. And it can cause panic because sometimes you get these alerts that like, oh, it went down, but you've still been training. Maybe this should be a side note here. If you've ever had Garmin tell you that you were untrained or like detraining while you were in the middle of a build, know that these alerts can sometimes be a little bit wonky.
Yeah,
it's actually the reason why I switched my watch. I was like, how dare you?
Calm down.
So, all of this you shouldn't read too deeply into. HRV indicates your nervous system readiness. It's essentially, it can be a recovery score, or how prepared are you to take on hard training. But I think a lot of people don't understand how the factors that influence it and why it might change over time. And what even a good HRV score is.
Very individual as well.
Very individual. So this is something that you can pay attention to and monitor on your same fitness device over time, but it's not something that I think is going to play into, that our average runner is going to have play into experiencing a great training cycle.
I also think that different wearables right now are doing a better job and a worse job at this. Mm-hmm. Personally, I think Oura Ring does the best, and then Whoop, and then your wearables. Mm-hmm. VO2 Max. This is the one, I swear, Garmin shoves it in your face. You're like, all right, I get it, bro. Chill out. It is, I don't love that a lot of wearables actually make this into like a competition of like, what color are you? Are you superior? Are you optimal, right? It's an interesting number, but most athletes don't get much value out of paying close attention to it. It is going to improve over a season. It should. Mm-hmm. So for me, taking like that meta view probably is the most important instead of like day to day. Look at it in like month on month as you progress through a 4 to 5 month build.
Yeah. And finally, we have sleep score. And this is one that I think is interesting-ish, but actually kind of, there are so many factors that go into your sleep score. Also, you don't have to sleep with your fitness watch on.
I do not. I don't want to.
I don't understand how people do it. They're so big. I do sleep with the Whoop on, so I do get some of these numbers. If you have a fitness tracker like the Oura Ring, which would be probably the least offensive to sleep with, right? You might get the sleep score, and the truth is, like, when you slept like trash.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I think on a negative piece of paying too close attention to the sleep score or any of these metrics is that you can talk yourself out of having a good training day.
Totally agree with that.
Because you feel like, oh, this says that I'm in the red, I need to back off. I think those are guardrails, but I also think that you have to cross-compare to how you actually feel.
And you can use other things instead of sleep, right? Like if your resting heart rate, again, is elevated, you might know that you're a little bit light on sleep, right? Also, go back to episode 200 where we're talking about our favorite episodes and we go over a few ones that touch on sleep. You are going to most likely race without having slept well. So yeah, you are absolutely able to have a shitty sleep score and be able to execute your workout well. So don't get caught up on that one.
All right, finally, we have a couple of things that are worth tracking, not on a fitness tracker, but things that you should pay attention to. So if you are a person who tracks and you're a little bit of a nerd like that, first thing I would say is rate of perceived exertion.
Yeah, how hard did it feel?
Exactly. There's a little spot in Training Peaks for you to make notes of that, but also in your paper journal. You can just track how hard are things feeling, and then use that as a way to compare to, okay, it was really humid, it was really hot, I didn't eat well, I didn't sleep well. There you can get so many clues, and like you said earlier, paint that picture by using RPE.
Next up is actually nutrition notes. So what you ate before, right? Day before, morning of, and during, huge right here. So that you are able to, it doesn't need to be super detailed, but okay, awesome. Miso chicken and rice means I have a lot of salt and carbs and I'm feeling good and I didn't poop my pants, right? Like whatever that is, and then you can again put it together so that you know the recipe that works.
Yeah, and then finally is making notes of any injuries, aches, or pains. Those are things that can help you training long term, and we've done whole episodes about things that you could write down in your training journal, so go back to that episode and see all of the other things that you could track. In terms of data tracking though, tracking your metrics, it's very personal. So there are a ton of things that you could lean into. Make sure that you are using the same device if you do choose to track, and look at it in the big picture over time, not just diving into one particular workout.
All right. Get nerdy, but not too nerdy. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Coach Quip. Original music performed by Ment. Follow us online on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edge Athlete Lounge. Our podcast lives in the blog section of our website. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and you can check out the show notes for additional ways to contact us. Ready, set, onward we go.